looking for this money to develop alternative fuel technologies. Well, who can argue with that with gas at $4.50?
We've been saying that for the last 5 years. When gas prices went to $2.25 from $1.98, they said, "Oh, we're going to invest in future alternative energy sources." And guess what? They haven't.
Exactly. And
guess what their profits are? Exactly.
And this should have been research and development that they should have been funding from their own balance sheets. Why is this the taxpayers' responsibility to fund a private corporation's business, and to the tune of what, $25 to $50 billion? You know, if Lockheed wants to do a new jet, or if Martin Marietta wants to develop a new sub, or what have you, or if I have a daughter who works for Myriad Genetics, if they're looking for a new genetic marker for colon cancer or something, they fund their own research and development.
And you know what the worst part about this is? They're taking that money, and guess where it's not being invested?
Exactly.
Not in U.S. banks. Guess where it is?
Exactly.
Offshore. Everywhere.
All right, so our listeners should also know that all the Democratic Party leaders in Congress are behind this. Nancy Pelosi is beating the drum for this money, yada, yada, yada. So, again, if you think it's right, that's your business. I don't think it is. This is a private enterprise. These are corporations. Corporations should be doing corporate business, and that means funding their own product development with their own money.
No, they are doing corporate business. They're funding politics. That's what they do.
And that's a perfect lead into our guest. As I mentioned, James Galbraith is the son of John Kenneth Galbraith. I can remember reading John Kenneth Galbraith's book, Economics 101 or whatever it was, back in 1970 at Johns Hopkins when I was a freshman in college. I think my professor was Carl Christ, who's kind of the father of econometrics. And just kind of slogging through it. It's kind of like the ABCs of economics. In so many ways, John Kenneth Galbraith's son has superseded the work of his father, and really done meaningful, important work as it relates to poverty, as it relates to government, as it relates to big business, and as it relates to a new class of predators that have arisen in the United States today, and that have pretty much hijacked the American government. James Galbraith started his career as a staffer on several committees in Congress in the 1980s. He ended up serving as the executive director of the Joint Economic Commission of Congress, very important job. He was still a young man at the time. He then transitioned to academia, where he is currently the Lloyd Benson Jr. Chair, or holds, I guess it's an endowed chair, at the Lyndon Baines Johnson School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas in Houston. He is, again, a very big feather in his cap, and it speaks of how his colleagues think of him. Professor Galbraith has also been elected president of by the international community of professional economists. He's been elected president of the Economists for Peace and Security. Professor, welcome to our show.
Thanks very much, and thanks for that introduction. I will say one thing about it is that my father would not have approved. He did not think he could be superseded.
Well, I don't think my father approves of me, if that's any consolation. I got an email from him that I read on this show, who congratulated me on my new career, quote unquote, such as it is, because I used to be a hedge fund manager, and now I'm doing community radio and writing for the Alternative Weekly Press. So they congratulated my career such as it is, hoping that I would achieve the success of someone like Rush Limbaugh, and begging me not to succumb to my bleeding, what did they say, bleeding liberal tendencies or something like this. So we all have our Oedipal struggles. Do I call you professor? Do I call you doctor? Do I call you James?
James would be fine. That's my name, actually.
Good name. Good name.
There are a lot of professors.
You know, I want to call you accord you all the respect that you're due, because, dude, you rock. I saw your article in Mother Jones, and it's right on the money, and so timely. Let me start out with the Fannie and Freddie bailout. Would that be okay with you?
Sure.
All right. As we've mentioned in earlier emails, I've been on this with the Alternative Weekly Press for quite some time now, and have an article in the current issue of the Bohemian, which pretty much crows about the fact that we called it. And yet, so many people missed it. When you look back in March, the guy who was the regulator, if you will, over Fannie and Freddie at the Fed, a guy by the name of James Lockhart, announced that Fannie and Freddie were, quote, safe and sound, and that Fannie and Freddie were, quote, ready to rescue the housing market. What happened, sir? What went wrong?
They obviously were not safe and sound, and they were going to prove to be victims of the general housing slump rather than the white knights, to put it an end to it. And it shows, I think, that we're very far from the end of the larger problem, which is an accelerating decline in home values and in the value of the assets that are based on home mortgages.
So how does this happen? How do the feds not have any oversight? I mean, we can barely cross a street without getting a jaywalking ticket, but the feds can't see the trend and have some kind of oversight into what's going on in these markets?
Well, let's distinguish between Fannie and Freddie as corporations and the larger housing market. With Fannie and Freddie, there obviously were major problems, and there had been since this has been well known since the early part of this decade. There had been efforts to make them appear more profitable.